a social cast. So all I got to say to you, flea-bitten, plague-ridden serf, so blindly acquiescent. When an angry mob is forming, what the fuck wilt thou do? Damn, it feels good to be a peasant.
It is Saturday, September 9th, in the wee hours of the morning. This is the Dissident Peasant podcast, recorded under a state of emergency. On today's show, Hillary Clinton has a new book out and has failed to learn a valuable lesson about politics in these modern times. Since mainstream Democrats don't seem to have any idea what to do, we'll take a stab at explaining to them what needs to happen and what's likely to happen if they don't heed this advice. Next, Mueller Watch is back. He's blocking all the exits in anticipation of the kill. The GOP's core brand proposition as rulers, not campaigners. What is it? A figure from ancient past could help us understand. All this and more. Here's your host, Jeff, the Dissident Peasant.
Thank you, Mystery Voice, and thank you, audience. I am your host, Jeff, the Dissident Peasant, and we are recording this from directly in the path of Hurricane Irma. And we are under a state of emergency. All that is true. Schools are closed on Monday in my county. Projections are uncertain. The last I saw was filed at 8 p.m. by my local news team. Had it passing basically directly over my house, the eye of the storm, as opposed to further east towards Savannah, where they thought it was going. When it gets here Monday afternoon, we're expecting gusts up to 50 miles an hour, 3 to 6 inches of rain, so nothing too serious. But I did have a few people reach out to me on Twitter and other places asking if I'm okay, and we're okay. We're not doing much storm prep here. We got some bottled water and some food to eat, so we don't need to go out. But other than that, we haven't really taken any precautions. We're going to be fine here, so don't you worry about Dissident Peasant Studios. I also informed my production assistant to keep all hurricanes off the premises, and he seemed agreeable to that. So I've always been able to count on him, so I don't foresee any problems. On to the show, because we got a lot to get to today that I want to talk about. So Hillary Clinton has a new book out. It's called What Happened? Pretty much everyone has heard about this. It's pretty terrible, and the excerpts are frankly shocking to me. I really did have more hope that Clinton would have learned a bit more from the 2016 election. I'm going to read to you the most problematic excerpt, in my opinion. Quote, "Because we agreed on so much, Bernie couldn't make an argument against me in this area on policy, so he had to resort to innuendo and impugning my character. Some of his supporters, the so-called Bernie Bros, took to harassing my supporters online. It got ugly and more than a little sexist when I finally challenged Bernie during a debate to name a single time I had changed a position or a vote because of a financial contribution. He couldn't come up with anything. Nonetheless, his attacks caused lasting damage, making it harder to unify progressives in the general election and paving the way for Trump's crooked Hillary campaign. I don't know if that bothered Bernie or not. He certainly shared my horror at the thought of Donald Trump becoming president, and I appreciated that he campaigned for me in the general election. But he isn't a Democrat. That's not a smear, that's what he says. He didn't get into race to make sure a Democrat won the White House. He got in to disrupt the Democratic Party. He was right that Democrats needed to strengthen our focus on working families, and that there's always a danger of spending too much time courting donors because of our insane campaign finance system. He also engaged a lot of young people in the political process for the first time, which is extremely important. But I think he was fundamentally wrong about the Democratic Party, the party that brought us Social Security under Roosevelt, Medicare, and Medicaid under Johnson, peace between Israel and Egypt under Carter, broad-based prosperity and a balanced budget under Clinton, and rescued the auto industry, passed health care reform, and imposed tough new rules on Wall Street under Obama. I am proud to be a Democrat, and I wish Bernie were too." End quote. So, first thing, I don't hold Hillary Clinton responsible for the actions of her worst supporters. It's not fair to hold Bernie Sanders responsible for the actions of his worst supporters. So, on its face, this argument is dumb, and it shouldn't be in this book. Furthermore, to the extent that his supporters harassed people online, that's wrong. But it seems to me that incidents were picked out and blown up to advance a candidate who was not as progressive as her opponent in the Democratic Party. And using sexism as a club to stop progress or to beat off a challenge from the left seems kind of creepy to me. I don't approve of that. And I don't think good thinking progressives should approve of that. If you care about gender equality, then it's important to take it seriously and not use it to further your ends, your own personal ambition. That's what I think. This trying to pin Crooked Hillary as a campaign slogan on Bernie Sanders is nonsense. This passive-aggressive comment about Bernie Sanders being bothered or not bothered by that is petty bullshit. I don't want to relitigate the 2016 primary, but apparently Hillary Clinton still does. I'm not interested in Hillary Clinton's complaints about Bernie Sanders not being a registered Democrat. Trademark. Who cares? He didn't run to disrupt the Democratic Party. He ran to refocus it back on working people. You know, this isn't just about Hillary Clinton, okay? Politicians, in some ways, are really the sum of their followers, their constituents, their handlers and advisors. And presumably, this book represents some knowledge and wisdom from those people that they've gained from the 2016 election. And if that's what they chose to include in the book, this transparent bullshit, I refuse to let it go unchallenged. Okay? I would much rather be fighting fascism right now. But we can't fight fascism if we can't win elections. And this bullshit's not going to help us win elections. Barrett's not going to help us win elections. Bernie Sanders was an aging Jew in a rumpled suit from a tiny state who started running not because he thought he could or would win the nomination, but to send an urgently needed message to people that the current system of increasing brutalization of the peasantry is not a good idea, and he almost beat her. Not because he's charming or handsome or courageous or competent or efficient or organized, because he's pro-peasant and people pick up on that. It was his message that nearly carried him to victory on nothing. That should have scared the shit out of them. And instead we dragged her, kicking and screaming to the left, and I did everything I could, and I told everyone I could, please vote for this woman. Vote for this woman. I'm not a huge fan of her either. Vote for this woman. She wasn't giving me a lot to work with. And it'd be one thing if their plan worked, okay? I might still disagree with them, because I think the sort of coalition you seek in victory speaks a lot to your priorities in government. And when I hear stuff about how we're going to pick up a bunch of suburban Republican women voters, I'm a bit suspicious of your motives. Tax reform. But it didn't work, okay? It didn't work. Popular vote aside, it didn't work. But you play the game as it's rigged. And it is rigged against you. We still got to play it. So how do you win that game? How are we going to win that game? Hillary Clinton doesn't know how to win that game. I'm going to try and put it a little different way, because there's something a lot of people in the center and even some on the left of the Democratic Party don't understand. So let me put it this way. The Democratic Party needs some racist white people to vote for it. I want to play you a clip now.
You can't buy presents for your children. It's really hard. And I worked 3, 4, 5 jobs sometimes, always minimum wage. I have a degree. Divorced, and It's just, I'm waiting for disability to come through, so my parents have to support me. It's just hard.
All right, thank you. Thank you. It is not easy for people to stand up and say that. But the truth is that until millions of people who are experiencing exactly what you guys are experiencing do say that, we don't make change. So I thank you for saying and for telling us what's going on in your lives, because the truth is, you can't make it on 12,000. You can't live in dignity on 10,000 or less.
That's from an Iowa town hall just before the presidential caucuses began in January. I don't know that woman, and I don't want to presume to speak about her personal attitudes, but she represents a class of people in Iowa, and I don't want to be too judgmental, but let's just say many of them probably don't have the most enlightened views on race. Right? But as long as their vote isn't animated by their racism or bigotry or white supremacy, we should take it. As long as we can get their vote while remaining committed to justice for all marginalized groups in this country, we should take it. It's fine to run on that stuff, with me anyway. But you also got to offer some universality, right? Some hope for the future for these people. You know what beats racism? Cold hard cash. In the form of increased wages and health benefits and consumer protection. You can get some of those racist white people to vote for you in some places. And we don't need all of them, and we don't need most of them, but we just need some of them and a few more to feel unsure of their choice. Maybe stay home, maybe not vote for Republicans quite so fervently. Because if we don't get power back through the ballot box and fighting the American police state in the streets is the only thing left for us, we are not likely to come out on top, us on the left. I'm not against marching in the streets. I'm not against civil disobedience. I'm not against Antifa. But if our strategy for beating fascism doesn't include taking power over some levers of government as soon as we can, we need to wrap this whole experiment in democracy up. Because there may be nothing new under the sun, but I don't think the Nazis had microprocessors and terabytes of data on every living person in Germany. They didn't have nuclear weapons. They didn't have the technology that we have today. I'm just afraid the pace of technological advancements has increased so dramatically in this country since the last time there was really an active and radical left movement, which would probably be the 70s, 60s, that if a real competent police force gets off the ground in the United States of America, on the richest country on the planet, then we're probably in huge trouble. Race education in this country is a worthy project. I'm on board with it. I do my best to commit to it and do what I can to make it happen, but I'm not sure that it's really a project for our political leaders. At least not all the time. Not when they're out trying to get votes. And the same goes for, sexism or LGBTQ issues or any other identity politics, if you want to use that phrase. I try to avoid it as much as I can. You can run on that stuff, but you need to walk and chew gum at the same time. And these people are supposed to be professionals. Doesn't seem that hard to me, that's all I'm saying. And it's really the only way forward. It's the only shot that we have. Because we're running out of time. We're running out of time due to Trump, and we're running out of time due to global climate change. Okay, folks, it's time for some Mueller Watch. That's right, America's most famous lawman wants to talk to 6 aides of Donald Trump, including Reince Priebus, Hope Hicks, Sean Spicer, the White House counsel, and his deputy, as well as the spokesman for Jared Kushner. This comes just after Trump recently exercised his power to pardon people with Joe Arpaio in Arizona. Right after that, it was reported Mueller's been conferring with the New York State Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman. Coincidentally, money laundering is illegal under New York state law. Also, coincidentally, the president's power to pardon only extends to federal crimes. So Mueller is setting traps and blocking exits. That's what's happening. He saw Trump's trial balloon, right, of Joe Arpaio and made sure that it was known that it won't save him. And also ensure that firing him will probably result in an indictment against Trump from New York State. Also, Don Jr. testified in front of a Senate committee on Friday. Among other things, he argued that he wasn't looking for opposition research on Clinton. He just wanted to assess her fitness for president. Coincidentally, Don Jr. will probably find himself in prison in the future. At least I hope so. So look, Mueller's probably still going to be fired when Trump figures out everything that I've just figured out. He'll reason that it would be better to fight New York State than his own Department of Justice. I'm not sure it's going to work. I'm not sure how all that shakes out. It's pretty scary, actually, to think about. The prospect of armed men marching into the White House to escort the President of the United States to booking. That would be something. You know, does anyone give any thought to what happens if he doesn't leave? What's the Secret Service going to do? What's anyone going to do if he decides that this is all illegitimate? I think it's too early to speculate openly about that, but maybe I'll have more to say about it in the future. But that's your Mueller update this week. He's coming for you, Trump. He's coming for you. However it goes down, it's going to be ugly. Finally, I want to talk about the core brand proposition, if you will, of the GOP. And a man from the ancient past who exemplifies that core brand proposition, that man's name is George W. Bush. He was president a really, really long time ago, from 2000 to 2008. And his mode of governance was destructive and bungling, and it paved the path that we're on now. I mean, the list of particulars will be extremely numerous, and this podcast cannot be 7 hours long. But just off the top of my head, we all remember how Iraq was set up after Saddam was toppled. Important government ministries were turned over to unqualified political hacks from the GOP. We all remember hundreds of thousands of private contractors lurking about in Iraq, murdering civilians and not being held accountable. Right? We remember when Katrina drowned while President Bush patted his horse trader buddy on the back and told him he was doing a heck of a job because he'd raised 6 figures for him during his re-election campaign. Right? It's not just Trump. That's my point. It's not just Trump. You know, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan didn't have the votes from their caucuses to raise the debt ceiling or provide $8 billion in FEMA spending. Democrats had to do a lot of that lifting, along with Trump. You know, people are shocked right now that Trump is siding with the Democrats over the GOP. It's because the Democrats, for all their flaws, are the only ones with any semblance of a vision for how the country should be governed. Now, I would argue that their vision these days is far too status quo, and we need radical change soon. But putting that aside, they have a vision, even if it's just the status quo working properly. Status quo is not acceptable, but it's better than chaos. It's better than voting for a Green New Deal, certainly. Elections have consequences. And George W. Bush election had consequences. It had consequences in Katrina, it had consequences in Iraq, and it had consequences on Wall Street. It brought this country to its knees. We're still recovering. And to the extent the country is being run, it's being run by 3 generals. This is not acceptable for our modern democracy. Okay, folks, that's today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank anyone and everyone who's given me pointers or encouragement on these little weekly therapy sessions that I do. I am working hard on the quality and rhythm of this little adventure, so I appreciate your patience. If you like this podcast, you can write me a review on iTunes. If you're on Stitcher or YouTube right now, you can like this video or podcast if you do. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next week. Stay dissident, serfs.
Our rewards are not in heaven.
Money tough and union made.
We can fight but strong together.
Money tough and union made.
Divided we fall, united we stand.
Money tough and union made.
It's a working woman and a working man.
Money tough and union made.
We not waiting for judgment day.
Money tough and union made.
Money tough and union made.
Money tough and union made. Money tough and union made. One long struggle day by day. That's how we got to be this way.
Money tough and union made.
Hillary Clinton also talks about something called pony promises, that you were promising people ponies, and she would say, where are the ponies going to come from? How are we going to pay for the ponies? Will Washington, agree? Or are we going to regulate the ponies? And you would say, Hillary Clinton hates ponies. Hillary Clinton also talks about something called pony promises, that you were promising people ponies, and she would say, where are the ponies going to come from? How are we going to pay for the ponies? Will Washington, agree? Or are we going to regulate the ponies? And you would say, Hillary Clinton hates ponies. Okay, doesn't think that America deserves ponies. What do you make of her accusations that you promised too much and essentially forced her into a position where unless she took the most left-wing view, she would lose the base that you were helping create?
Let's look at what we talked about. What are the promises that I made? I said...
Universal health care.
I said that in America, we should join every other industrialized country and guarantee health care to all people as a right. And there is now growing sentiment for that effort. So that's not a pipe dream. A majority of the American people now believe that the government should make sure that every man, woman, and child has health care as a right.